what would be like your biggest tip to artists who are trying to like grow more, who are trying to do more? Like, what's the thing that you see from a first-hand perspective that artists can do to just make their career better?
Yeah. Okay. So as far as artists, you're talking about like artists that are trying to gain a following and create some buzz, right? All right. So when we go on social media, typical artist that you know that's not signed yet or hasn't blown up yet, what do they normally do when a single drops? Cover art, pop music, this and that. It doesn't work, right? We're so used to ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Hulu, Netflix, everything's an ad, right? Here's what you do, right?
Hey everybody, it's Keith from Keyz Productions. Welcome to another episode of On the Mic, where we actually talk to people in the music community who's actually done something. And on today, we have someone very special with us. He's a producer, an engineer. He's worked with a lot of top artists, man, and companies. Somebody go by the name of The Game, Talib Kweli, Just Blaze, Music Soul Child, NBA 2K, DC Films, Billboard Hitmakers, Trizza, Atmosphere, Raheem Devon, CW's Black Lightning, and the credits keep going on and on and on. So we won't bore you with too many more credits. I bring to the stage none other than Realistic Productions. How are you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. I appreciate the intro there, man. I haven't had an intro like that. That's nice, man. I appreciate it. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing good. No complaints. No complaints whatsoever. So before we get into like a whole bunch of questions, real quick, can you tell everybody who you are, where are you from, what do you actually do? Just a little bit more about you so we understand who we're dealing with here.
Yeah, so I mean, you introduced me Realistic. One of the most things I'm known for is I'm Sound Oracle's head engineer. That's Timbaland and Polo the Don's sound designer. So I'm his engineer and I'm also his production assistant. So I handle a lot of stuff for him. I'm in Atlanta. I'm originally from Green Bay, Wisconsin, go Pack, but now I live in Atlanta, and so I've been down here for about a year now. And yeah, man, just produce, engineer, and do a lot of content, tutorials, courses, anything that can help out the community.
So cool. So Atlanta, how's the Atlanta scene in the music? Because a lot of people swear you have to go to Atlanta to make your break inside the music scene now. So is that true in your opinion? Is that true? Or are you just down there just to be down there?
Oh yeah, so this is actually a really dope question because there's two things in there that if people are watching, there's two little gems that they can get out of this. Okay, so before I went to Atlanta, I had worked with quite a few people, but after I moved to Atlanta, my credit list really blew up. So the first part of that I want to unpack is I was literally living in the middle of nowhere, like in Wisconsin, Green Bay. It's the only thing we're known for is the Green Bay Packers, right? And so at that time, I was still able to, that's where I got my gig to work with Sound Oracle. And I did that through being, savvy online on social media, having a good presence. And that's what I want people to understand is if you're not in one of the big areas, you can still make some noise by, you know, just doing your thing on social media, getting your stuff out there. Because if your content is dope, people are going to gravitate towards that. So that's how I was able to work with Oracle and Trizza. I worked with Billboard Hitmakers there, Atmosphere, Rhyme Sayers, all them. I even did the NBA 2K and my Hamburger Helper gigs I did when I was out there. But then I had moved to Atlanta recently because Oracle's down here and a lot of other people that I work with are down here. And I kept getting clients that were down here. And then I kept every time I would come and visit, I would always run into some crazy situation. Like the first time I was down here, for instance, I was setting up a studio session for Oracle, and then Keith Thomas came in. That's Usher's head engineer, right? He came in and he needed me to, actually, he didn't need me to. I was just in there, and he was like, hey, what are you doing? He didn't know who I was. I was like, I'm just setting up. He's like, okay, well, I got to install like a new amp. Can you do this? And since I had experience with that before, I was actually able to help him out. So like I spent 30 minutes helping out Keith Thomas set up his new amp for his Yamaha NS10s. And then like afterwards, he was like, yo, appreciate that, man. If you want, you can start coming to the studio and, you know what I'm saying, I can start throwing mixes your way. And I'm like, damn, my flight leaves tomorrow. And so, you know what I'm saying? So after that, I had a conversation with my girlfriend. I'm telling her about it. And she's like, okay, yeah, we might need to make the move. So then we would visit a couple times to look at like houses and stuff. And every time we come down here, we'd be getting into some crazy situation with some like big artists or something. So that's when we decided to make the move. And so since I've been down here, I mean, it's almost a year. And within a year, that's when I started to be able to do Cal Quali, Just Blaze, The Game. I did a session for Nicki Minaj back in April. This is where I landed my stuff for DC Films. I mean, all of that stuff happened when I started coming down there. So just to kind of, you know, just consolidate everything. The two gems in there is, yeah, you can still make it no matter where you're at. You know what I'm saying? Just do your thing and hustle and get presence out there. But, you know, if you do want to, you know, really build up your credit list, it can help to be in an LA or New York or Atlanta because that's just where all the people are, you know?
So real quick before we go deeper into that, what actually made you want to be an engineer, right? Because I'm an engineer myself, and there's so many different roles in the music industry you can be. A lot more of that, a little bit more sexy though. You know, we're kind of like the geeks somewhat, you know what I'm saying, to a degree. But we're definitely the ones that people, you know, put the trust in for sure, because we're responsible for the latter end of the process of the sound sounding the way it actually is. So what actually made you become an engineer?
Yeah, you know, I always joke whenever people ask like why I don't like sing or anything like that. I always tell them like, you don't want to hear me sing. There's a really good reason why I'm on this side of the glass, why I'm working the knobs, because you know I just don't have that. So like early on, I think I started out like how a lot of people did, you know, writing poetry, writing rhymes. Then naturally, you know, as a teenager, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I could rap. Realized wasn't really decent at that. Then I started getting into producing, and I did producing for a really long time. And it's still something I do and still something that I love. But then I went to school for music production. And in the music production school, we also had a bunch of classes for engineering, recording, and mixing and mastering. And there's two things. One, I actually really started to fall in love with being able to manipulate sound and add clarity and clean things up. I fell in love with being able to have a lot of that control. And then also too, I was starting to see that being an engineer, that's where a lot of the money is. You can make a lot of more, you know, you can have a actual career in it. And then also I was starting to see that's where you could get a lot of like opportunities. Like, you know, for instance, you might be recording a session and let's say like YG comes through, right? And you're recording YG or something. How many times does the artist say to the engineer, like, yo, pull up some beats? That's a lot. Like a lot of times they're like, yo, just start pulling up some beats. They want you to go through YouTube or if there's anything on the computer. But if you're also a producer, that's where you can start throwing your beats in the rotation and start getting those opportunities. So, you know, I just was starting to see that, you know, I got peeped on that game and I was like, okay, cool, you know, it's money, opportunity, and it's something I love.
So wow, so that's good. So you touched on this just a little bit. You touched on this just a little bit, but how did you find yourself really working with like these big artists? You said that you are, you know, at the studio and, you know, opportunity presented itself because you found yourself to be valuable, to someone who really needed that value at that time, and that actually opened up a door of opportunity for you. How did you find yourself actually working with these top artists, you know, that we grew up listening to, that we love all the time? How did you actually walk into like that space, like that head space? How did you actually get there? Like what made you and what helped you get to that point?
So a lot of it came from my initial gig working with Oracle, right? He's a really well-connected person. You know, not only does he sound design for Timberland and Polo Don, but he's also produced records for Drake, Nicki, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Neo, 50. It's a long list, right? And so because he was so well connected and I was his assistant, that's also another way to get in, is if you're an assistant for like a top producer or engineer. So I got in with him, and then that's when, you know, like I said, I was in the studio setting up his stuff, and then Keith Thomas walked in. So then that happened, and then I had, through him, I had met Amon Jackson. Now he is a legendary Atlanta engineer. He's worked with Future, Young Thug, Rick Ross, Snoop Dogg, Quavo, 2 Chainz. It's a long list, right? So I had met him through Oracle because I was on, we were at a networking event and we were both speaking at a panel together, right? You know, just, you know, at a panel, you speak on there, you give advice to people that are in the crowd. So then AJ and I had connected afterwards, right? Because you're like, oh, you're a dope engineer. I respect you. I respect you too, type thing. We exchanged numbers. And then that's when, you know, we just kept in contact. And then when I had moved down to Atlanta, or when I was talking about moving in Atlanta, I was like, how can I make this happen? So AJ and I had talked about putting our studios in the same building. And in fact, on that side of that door is his studio. And so that's where another place where I get a lot of opportunities from is because I assist him and I work for him. That's where, you know, I got to work with all the people I listed, like the Game and Talib Kweli. Matter of fact, today, just crazy thing. It's kind of why I was like a couple minutes late getting in here. Today, a Tory Lanez record landed in the studio, so I had to work on that all day. So now, when that comes out, I can add, you know, Tory to the credits, right? And so it's just like by assisting him, you know, and whoa, okay, let me backtrack. Working with Oracle led me to be able to meet all these people, and then eventually I had met AJ through Oracle, and then now same thing. I'm assisting AJ like I was assisting Oracle, and you know opportunities come that way. So I think a lot of producers and engineers and people, one thing they're sleeping on is being someone's assistant for a little bit. You know, just kind of, you know, not really being the forefront of the show, but just somebody that's kind of in the background, kind of helping out, can really lead to a lot of opportunities.
It's crazy that you say that because a lot of people, you know, we think of, you know, if I'm in the business of servicing these type of clients or these types of people, then, you know, those are the people who I really want to connect with, or those are the people who I really want to work with the most because I know that they will probably do the best for what I got going on in my business. But you're just like, yo, I'm connecting with somebody who does what I do on a different level and
Yeah,
leveraging relationships off of them versus, and let me try to what do they do now? They try to like slide in Tory Lanez's like DM or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
exactly. And you're just gonna be in the request folder. Like you're not gonna see that. And I had remembered something. Gary V. He was very famous for saying this: that if you're trying to make it, work under somebody for like 3 to 5 years that's doing what you're trying to do, right? You know what I'm saying? And when he said that, I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. Like I'm trying to produce engineer, so I'm gonna work under somebody who's already established, and then I can learn the ropes, and then eventually I can go on to do my own thing, you know?
Wow, that's crazy. You're dropping a lot of gems early on too, and it's crazy. You're dropping a lot of bars because if any of you go find Realistic, you'll see that he's an educator, and a lot of all the content he puts out, he really tries to make sure that people understand. So it's crazy the amount of bars that you're dropping already. Dropping already. I hope people are really getting it. So let me ask you this: getting to that level to be able to work with these different type of clients, the credit list is getting crazy. You're working with Oracle, you're working with all of these legends, right? How do you set yourself apart now? Because it's kind of easy to, I don't want to say easy, but it's kind of a more achievable goal to set yourself apart on the level that you're at now. But when you actually move to a new level, how do you distinguish yourself now in a new class of people? Like you're going to a new school and you're the new guy, right? So it's like you have to not just show up, but you actually have to, you know, prove who you actually are. So how do you set yourself apart?
Yeah, it's actually my bad. It's crazy that you mentioned that because I was just thinking about this like a week or two ago, of like the reputation that I've gained is I'm a really hard worker and really reliable. So much so that AJ, when on the days that I'm supposed to be taking off, you'll literally ask my girlfriend like, "Yo, is he actually taking the day off? Because like he needs to like rest." And he's a really hard worker. He grinds all the time, and for him to be like, "Yo, like you work too much," so that's what really separates me is that I'm super reliable. I'm super prompt. I'm on time. My communication is really good, and these all sound like simple things, right? And that's the key, right? They're simple. They're things that literally do. Like none of this is like, yo, like nobody can do hi hats like me. Nobody can do an 808 glide like me. None of it is talent based. It's all just me being reliable, working hard. It's things that literally anybody that's watching, they can all do this. But what's crazy is in this industry, it's kind of rare. So stuff like that does set me apart. So when something that needs to be done, like when we got the game record or like when we got the Just Blaze Talib Kweli record, it came in because they're like, yo, like we need this last minute. Who can we depend on to get this done for us in a timely manner and for it to be right? Let's hit up these guys. So it's just things like that that really do set you apart because they know we can trust this person. Turnaround time is going to be crazy and the quality is going to be good.
Wow, that's definitely brand 101 right there and reputation 101 right there. So, you work with a lot of artists, not just producers, not just in sound design, but you work with a lot of artists. You're in the studio. You get the time to spend with these artists. And that's one thing that I do encourage a lot of producers and engineers to do is actually spend time with artists and don't just make beats just to be making beats and not actually understand what artists are thinking of kind of when they need to be. So working with so many artists in your career, what would be like your biggest tip to artists who are trying to like grow more, who are trying to do more? Like, what's the thing that you see from a firsthand perspective that artists can do to just make their career better?
Yeah. Okay. So as far as artists, you're talking about like artists that are trying to gain a following and create some buzz, right? All right. So when we go on social media, typical artist that that's not signed yet or hasn't blown up yet, what do they normally do when a single drops? Cover art, pop the music, this and that. It doesn't work, right? We're so used to ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Hulu, Netflix, everything's an ad, right? Here's what you do, right? You sit down in your studio or wherever you're comfortable, put the camera on you and talk for like 20 minutes, right? And just like, don't go live yet. I mean, you could go live, but I'm saying like talk about how you made the song, right? Of like, yo, when I wrote the song, I was, what I'm saying, my girl just left me or I just lost my job. And like, so I had sat down and like I wrote this, and then later on you're like, yo, so I did this when I was doing the flow. I did this little pattern. I switched up to this cadence to where it was more triplets here and this and that, right? So you're dropping gems through this whole thing, and then you record it for 20, 30 minutes. Then afterwards, chop it up into little micro content, right? Here's a little 1 minute thing, right? Headline, she broke my heart. So I wrote the song. Yo, someone might click it. Like you might actually watch that because that's a catchy little title. Or like, you might say like, like my flow delivery using triplets is like this, or just whatever an interesting quote is that you set in there. Now when people see that, they're gonna be like, oh wow, like I actually want to know that, or that sounds really interesting. And then at the end of the little 1 minute video, right, you play like 20 seconds of the song and little caption pops up, go stream it now. But what you just did was you've offered value. You dropped gems, you gave an interesting story. So now you've just sold them on you as a person. Now they believe in you. They might have learned something from you. They might have got inspired from you. And then at the end, they're like, oh, and the song is dope. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's one of the ways to do it these days is just, make some like valuable content. And then people are going to they're going to fuck with it. And then they might actually go check out the song afterwards.
Wow, that's actually a really good tip. And that's something that I kind of preach all the time, working with artists as well. It's not, nobody's just listening to your music because you're dope. Everybody's dope. nowadays, right? Or dope, or so.
Loops and like pre-made chord progressions and auto tune. When somebody's like, "Yo, my beats are fire," I'm like, "That's kind of this. That's like the entry level. Like, yeah, like it should be. Like, you got no excuse these days. Like, it's not like it was in the '90s. Like, yeah, like you should be dope. It's everything, like you said. It's like everything after that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, can you brand yourself? Can you make it a believable story? Can you fall in love with the person? Think about all the artists that people follow nowadays, like the big ones. A lot of it is like Cardi B, for instance, right? People really just like who she is on social media. They get a kick out of her, right? She's hilarious on there, so people mess with her. Little Dicky, he's got that show, right? And so it's a funny show, so people mess with that, so it's all people that kind of have a story of why you want to believe in them and follow them. It's got to be more than the music.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was another bar. So let me ask you this. We're in 2021, and especially because since COVID happened, a lot more musicians and producers all of a sudden were born into this world. So to the producer or to the musician who now is forced to be their producer, their engineer, or just to the new producer, what would you suggest is the starting point from here on out? Like, what's like the blueprint for a producer in 2021 starting off? Like, what's the welcome kit? What do they need? What kind of things should they do? If I were to be a producer starting today, what advice would you give me?
I always say, don't worry about all the gear or all the expensive plugins, right? You probably don't have the budget for that when you first start off. You get to know how everything works just using your software. If you got FL or Ableton or Logic, whatever it may be, right? Learn how an EQ works. Learn how a delay works. Because if you know how an EQ works, no matter what EQ that you're around, you're going to be able to use that EQ. Same with like, let's say it's like a wavetable or like a sampler or something. Learn how everything works in there, the attack time, the decay time, all that stuff. Learn how the portamento works, the glides. So if you learn all the fundamentals in the tools of how they all work, no matter what situation you're in, you're going to be able to execute. And also, I always think about this, right? Think about like the best basketball or football players we know, right? LeBron, MJ, Kobe, Brady, Manning, all of them, right? What are all of them? What do they all excel at, right? The fundamentals, right? Kobe, MJ, really good jump shot, really good dribbling. Those are fundamentals, right? Those are things that you can literally just practice. Brady, Manning, really good at their footwork and really good at their release. It's all fundamentals. So it's the same thing when you're a producer or an artist or an engineer. You get those fundamentals down. Don't worry about all the big, fun, sexy stuff. Like if you're a basketball player, you're doing like a 360 triple dunk. That's cool, but if like you can't dribble the ball or you can't if you don't got a good release time on your jumper, like that 360 dunk, like you can only pull that off every, maybe once a game, if that. That's a lucky shot. So it's just, get those fundamentals down. Same thing with the producer, engineer, artist. You get those down, you're gonna be solid, and you're always gonna be able to win, and your stuff is always gonna sound good because you got the fundamentals. And then afterwards, then you could do you could put the whipped cream on top afterwards.
So let me ask you this funny question. Give me one pet peeve that you have working with artists nowadays. What's just one pet peeve that's like you're like, yo, if they do this one more time, like what's that one pet peeve yet? Or you may have three.
Yeah, my man, one of the bigger ones is if they got like revisions for a mix and they
Oh man.
large paragraph in a text message. Like, bro, like first, like email me this, because like a text message is long, narrow. Email it to me and don't put it in a crowded paragraph. Give it to me in a list. So like turn the 808 up, turn the hi-hat down, so then I can just execute it. Because if I'm reading this big paragraph of like, yeah, man, the 808 needs to come down because when that comes in, I want the crowd to be able to go like this. Don't need all that, bro. Just give me a list so I can knock it out.
No, that's a big pet peeve. The pet peeve that I just had is when artists, we love you, by the way. But when the artist, when you're on like the 8th revision, but then they're asking you for something to change insignificantly in the 3rd revision that you did, and they need that by tonight. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah. Or like you're on like the 8th or 9th revision, or like, yo, I decided like to add like a drum kit right here. It's like, man, like it's just a whole new mix now.
right. Yeah, right. You finish it, and then they send you more stems, and it's like, wait, what is this? So let me ask you this.
Sure. Translate into which.
Thank you, Siri.
Train to go.
So let me ask you this. Working with all of these people that you have worked with, you've worked with so many people who are starting off. You've worked with so many people who have made a name for themselves. And working with all of these artists now, how surreal is it kind of knowing, like, because I saw like on your one of your videos, you were like, yeah, and I was on my way to a Nicki Minaj session, and it's like, oh, just casually on a Wednesday. It's like I was just on my way, you know. So how does it feel now to know that you've worked with so many artists, but now you're able to work with, you know, those artists that, you know, we all love and listen to? Like, how surreal is that for you?
Yo, so recently, because AJ and I both have this situation, and my girlfriend, she's also my photographer. She does a lot of photography for him, and she helps assist a lot of events and stuff. So she's around AJ a lot as well, and me a lot in the studio. And so AJ and I have this habit, right, where we'll get like a big record or a big artist, right, and we'll work on it, and we don't take a moment to sit back and process it or appreciate it, and we're just literally, we're all right, now we're gonna go on the next thing and the next thing, right? So it took a little bit to where my girlfriend had to like actually one day in the studio, she's like, no, we're actually gonna like sit down, we're gonna enjoy this stuff. It was actually for this album, this Sky Zoo album. It had hit #3 on the charts back in June, right? And like that's a big deal. And we were like, okay, but we got like this Music Soul Child record that we're working on, so we didn't even focus on it. And she's like, no, we're gonna stop, we're gonna actually focus on it, and we're gonna take a moment and celebrate the wins when you get them. But as far, so a lot of times I don't even get to like process it or even like understand how surreal it is. But then sometimes like I'll sit back and like think about it, like, you know, when my girlfriend really puts it in my head. And like the biggest thing that I think about, man, is like, bro, I did all this from nothing. Like I did this from like, I didn't have a rich uncle. I didn't have like a dad or a mom or, you know, a cousin that was connected in Hollywood. I didn't grow up in a big city. I didn't win the lottery. I didn't have the walking down the street to where it, you know, I was rapping or, you know, doing something, and an Hollywood agent was like, you're dope, you're gonna be the next Drake. You know, I didn't have that. It was literally from me just grinding and just never stop working. So when I sit back and look at it, I'm like, man, like I did this from nothing. It was just literally, I just worked for it. So sometimes I just like, just amazed that you can do all that from just working really hard and wanting it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So let me switch gears real quick. You do sound design as well, and you engineer sound design. So how easy is it, and how not easy is it? In other words, because a lot of producers nowadays who are trying to get into like a lot of sound design aren't really designing sounds, if you get what I'm saying.
And it's let's just start with how hard it is, because sound design, and I don't know if there is anything easy on it, man. It's hard, man. Like you really gotta like sit there, because like when you got a beat or a song, you got so many things that you can do to add and stuff. But when you just working on one sound, like you think about it, you got to make that one sound super dope. Whereas you're making a beat, you got all these options. Okay, 808, it's kind of plain. Oh well, the hi-hats will be exciting. Then I'll add in this little key here and this and that. Not with the when you're creating sounds. You got like one thing and you got to make that one thing super dope. So it's really tough and it's really time consuming and it takes a lot of brain power to do it. But it's dope though because you get something that nobody else has. Like, I think about the track that Skrillex did with Justin Bieber, the Where Are You Now, where they chopped his vocals up, ran it through Melodyne, pitched it up, added a format thing, and filtered it. That little dolphin sound that he's got,
Yeah.
that's a dope sound. And at the time, nobody had a sound like that. And it's when you hear it, it's like, yo, this is so dope, right? And so it just kind of reminds me of why I even got into music, growing up when I would hear records by Dre, right? Like Chronic 2001, or what I would hear like like Wu-Tang Clan, like like RZA or somebody like that, like the record Fourth Chamber. When I'm hearing like the sounds coming in, I'm like, yo, like what sound is that? Like that's one of the things I love about sound design is like when you can get it to where somebody just face palms and like, bro, like what sound is that? You know what I'm saying? It just kind of brings me back to what I fell in love with.
All right, cool. So as we are getting to the end and we're wrapping up soon, I want to ask this question. I ask everybody this question. You do a lot of things, but if you had to be known for one thing, what would that one thing be and why?
Okay. Now, would it be like one like career thing, like producer, engineer, or would it be like one?
What do you want to be known for?
Own
When they say realistic productions, what are they associating you with?
Man, when it all comes down to it, my biggest passion in it, no matter how many records I mix or master or record, producing is still like my number one thing. And I'm not talking like just making the beat. Like I love like producing, right? Like let's bring in like a choir, let's bring in some cellos, this and that, right? That's what I want to be known for is like the guy that just like creates these crazy experiences. Like like when we hear like a Kanye record, like it hits different, man. Like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, like when you hear All of the Lights or Lost in the World, stuff just hits different, or like Late Registration or any of them records, right? So like
Yeah.
like that, like that's when you have those moments and it's like, yo, like this was an experience. It's more than just music. Like I felt that, and it's something that you want to keep revisiting to go back on. That's what I ideally. That's everything I'm working for. That's the end result right there.
Hey, that's a good answer right there. All right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate you jumping on this with me. I got so many gems out of this conversation with you, especially at the beginning. I mean, good Lord, you just unloaded the clip. But you are associated with not just you, but other people as well. So if people need to find you, your work, everything that you do, where are all the places that they're going to find you?
Yeah, so if you go to realisticproductions.net, you'll be able to find like everything, tutorials, courses, sound kits, all that. So that's always a good place to start. But then Instagram, Realistic Productions, that's where a big handful of my like really useful content's at. And then as far as like my tutorials, those I actually do on Sound Oracle's page. So you can also check out Sound Oracle on YouTube or his Instagram page, and you'll be able to find a lot of my tutorials there.
All right, cool. So I'm definitely going to put every link in the description below of this video. Yeah, any last words that you want to tell the people before we sign off?
Man, just to really reiterate, just really to go back on what we were saying, that doesn't matter where you are, doesn't matter who you know or how you're connected, if you're willing to work hard and you put in the work, I promise you, like, you're gonna get to where you want. Because like I was just some kid in the middle of nowhere And I was able to make all this happen just from working hard. And at the time when I first started out, I promise you, nobody thought I was talented. People would be like, your shit is whack, you should quit, this and that. But I just kept working and working and working. So if you don't have your skill sets or talent to where you want it to be, I promise you, just keep working, you're gonna get to where you want. And people are gonna respect that, especially once you start getting in the industry and stuff. People always are gonna respect a hard worker.
Man, and there's nothing else to say. I want to say thank you for jumping on this with me, man. It was a pleasure. This was great. I'm going to go back and watch every single thing you said because you dropped a lot of bars that I'm definitely going to chop up and use for every Instagram post. But I appreciate you coming on once again. I need everybody to go find Realistic Productions. Make sure you go follow him, support him, everything that he's doing. And I am Keef Keyz. If you need anything, you can go to keefkeyz.com. That's KeefKeyz.com for all you artists and producers. And there's nothing else left to say. I will see you all in the next video.